in Keon and Lance, you have two players who, when they finish their career, are going to be amongst the most productive backs in Maryland football history. Anytime that can be said about a player, that pretty well distinguishes them, both amongst their current contemporaries in this conference and those people who have preceded them. They're two very, very good backs. They've got size, they got elusiveness, they got speed. Anytime backs are productive to the degree that they have been, obviously there's got to be a lot of good work going on up front. It's by far the largest group that we've played against. There'll be some matchups there where there'll be a 50 to 60 pound difference between our defensive player who's matched up on him. And in a couple cases, there'll be a couple of matchups with a couple of linebackers, there'll be a 100-pound difference. So we certainly have that to overcome. And then the two primary on-the-line tight ends are both 6'6" and 6'8", so they present a size differential for our outside guys that they haven't seen before. So it's a real good group of tight ends. It's a good line. There are two really good backs. I mean, it's just a good, solid offense and a good, solid running game. Inside, they have the two blockiest, thickest guys to put on our guards and center that we've played against this year. Probably each one is the stoutest player that we've played against in there. If he was in there by himself, that they're side by side. In Moore and Feliciano, they're the two stoutest guys together, certainly, that we've played against in there. And those kind of guys always create issues as far as getting movement inside as it dictates. And if you can't get movement on those guys, the linebackers get to run free. So those guys are very good there. They got two veteran guys outside in Covington and Navarre who've played very well against us in the past. And Navarre in particular, we just not only in our games with him, but in watching him on tape against other teams in the league, we just think he's one of the underrated and one of the real good players in the conference. So those guys in particular, they certainly run their share of schemes, but they're a little bit more like us in terms they're based around being a beat blockers team as opposed to just doing it all with schemes and stunts and that business. You know, these last two games have been pretty hard-fought games. Our players have done a good job of overcoming adversities and fighting back and not getting discouraged by them, but the reality is that we've given the other team the ball 3 times from the 13-yard line in. You know, to play the type of game that is going to be this team's style this year. Okay? That doesn't mean that it's the chosen style, the preferred one. It's the one that's best for this team and the one that this team is most capable of. We just can't continue to do those things. You know, that makes it too easy for the other team and too hard for us. We just can't continue to do that. Whoever's responsible for it. And it's been across the board. It's been ball carriers, it's been throwers, it's been kick returners. You know, there's got to be a substantial awareness that ball isn't a toy. You know, it's not a toy. It's when somebody has the ball, he's carrying the aspirations and the dreams of everybody in the organization. There's a lot of high energy, high motor, high intensity players. And so Chris certainly provides that to the others, but there are others that provide it to him also. So it's really a pretty fair trade-off back and forth between the whole group of them. I mean, how can you be as intense as Chris is? It's hard to be more intense and more aggressive than Nate Lyles. Nobody's got more energy or passion than Jeffrey Fitzgerald. Clint Symptom's a very emotional player, so I think that's part of their strength, that some of those factors, they don't rely on just one source for it. They trade it around amongst each other. If you could go back and, for example, UConn's got second and, I mean, you know, they're already ahead 3-0. They got 2nd and 1 on our 6-yard line last week. Not the best of circumstances to be in on defense. Okay, they end up kicking a field goal. It's only 6-0. Okay, That's still a one-score game. And he makes two marvelous plays on it that those kind of plays can come up at any time. So, yes, but Appleby's there, Dias is there, Sintom's there, Vic Hall's there in terms of those turns that we would really like to do that. But there's a value to being able to rotate players, but there's also a reason why certain players are first team and certain players aren't. And, that's because they play better. And so sometimes when you take that player out and you're giving them a rest, who are you really doing the most benefit to? Are you doing something for the other team that they couldn't do themselves, which is keeping that player from making a good play for your team? And that's what these guys have done here now for 19 games. And the results here on defense over 19 games have been pretty good doing it that way. Lots of development in front of him. So the high water mark we see as being well up there from where the performance is right now. To answer the question, Jeff, from a word that you had in there, punished, he's a big back, but right now he's not necessarily a punishing back. He just happens to be a big back. Actually, the most punishing back we have on the team is Cedric, because he's fashioned his game around that style. And he's fashioned his game around that style not necessarily because he's a large back, but as we've talked before about, said, he came to the realization that what he wasn't was a scat back. And that at whatever size he is, the type of punishing game that has been productive for him this year is the kind of game that serves him best. And I think, as I have referenced on other occasions, it's a good example of a player coming to acceptance of who he is as a player. With his brother up there in Bath County, he had a real good quarterback to throw him the ball, so his team in high school wasn't hesitant to throw the ball. And so we had plenty of opportunity to observe him catching the ball. He was a good basketball player. He was a good baseball player. So besides in basketball and football, it was easy to see his ability to handle the ball. In basketball and baseball, that solidified his eye-to-hand coordination, and those are the two things necessary to be a good receiver. And so those two elements were pretty apparent as the evaluation of John went on. So we knew he would have a good-sized, rugged guy at tight end to do those elements of the job, and we knew we'd be getting a guy who'd be a viable pass-catching threat, and he's certainly turned out to be both.